Together, they had given each other courage and hope. Bearing the numbers the Nazis had tattooed on their arms, they had found in each other the strength to hold on to their humanity and resist becoming only numbers. They had vowed to help each other survive, both in body and soul. And they did survive, Baruch Hashem, but when the war ended, each went his own way, eager to begin anew. For sanity's sake, they each tucked the past away into a deep locked box that would be open only on rare occasions. Menachem had settled in Israel. Shlomi Kaufman obtained a visa for America. Consumed with creating a future and healing the wounds of the past, they had lost touch with each other. That was 42 years ago. Now, with unbelieving eyes and trembling hands, Mr. Kaufman beheld the unmistakable face of his friend once again. Shlomi decided in his mind Menachem Reiner would get the 6th Aliyah. As the Torah reading began, the Gabbai felt as his heart could not be contained in his chest. He wanted to leap across the rows of men and fall upon his friend in a mighty embrace. This must be how Joseph felt when he finally saw his brother Benjamin, he thought. All these years. Nevertheless, he clamped a tight lip on his emotions and performed his duty, calling up each Aliyah with the traditional chant of Ya'amod, followed by the honoree's Hebrew name. By the 5th Aliyah, however, beads of sweat were sparkling on his forehead and tears were rolling down his cheeks. He prayed that when he came to call the person for the 6th Aliyah, his voice would not break and he would be able to speak. There was no need to ask Menachem about his name because he could never forget it, Menachem ben Yehoshua. For the first time, he began to wonder how Menachem would react when they came face to face. And then it was time to call him up. But Mr. Kaufman could not open his mouth. There were no words to fit the moment. All the suffering locked away in that figurative box was now out in the open, laid out before his eyes, and it was too much for him to bear. The congregation began murmuring and looking toward Mr. Kaufman, fearing that the pale, trembling man was becoming ill. A deep cry rose within the Gabbai, a cry from God that contained in its broken sound all of his children's cries of anguish. Mr. Kaufman turned in the direction of the friend and at last found his voice. He said, Ya'amod 572000148. The baffled men in the shul did not understand what had happened. What was this number? What had become of Mr. Kaufman? But in the back of the room, one man understood completely. The number was Menachem's number, tattooed on his arm, and as a lifetime reminder of the darkest period of Jewish history, the epic tragedy of his people that he had witnessed with his own eyes. The entire shul sat in stony silence as Menachem moved slowly toward the bima. Finally, as they saw him approaching his long-lost brother, they understood the scene that was unfolding in front of them. Menachem needed no introduction. With tears coursing down his face, he cried out, Shloimela, Shloimela, is that really you? Yes, Menachem, it's really me, Mr. Kaufman answered, embracing his friend. And they wept on each other's shoulders, rocking gently. Aye, Mr. Kaufman breathed. Words were powerless to carry this chaotic emotion. The entire shul sat spellbound, witnessing a moment that could have melted a heart made of iron. As these two men stood together, living witnesses to the Jewish people's miraculous survival, it seemed that the heavens had opened up to declare through them that Hashem would never forget his people. Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish nation is alive, and Torah has been restored in America. The Holocaust survivors who came to America planted the seeds, and it is up to us to reap the fruits of their labor and continue their legacy.
Good afternoon. Over the years, we have commemorated here the Kristallnacht, which is the initiation of the pogroms in Germany. But this year we want to emphasize that pogroms were not limited just to Germany, but were all over Europe. And Moshe Yassur and I are both two survivors of these pogroms in other countries. He in Romania and I in Belgium. The town of Yassi, from where Moshe Yassur comes, is about 1,400 miles away from the town of Antwerp, Belgium. Nevertheless, the Germans initiated the same type of pogroms in both of those cities as far as they are. Both of us had our father killed during the war and were saved and survived because of our mothers. We both come and respond to the Torah by the names of Moshe ben Ze'ev, which is Ze'ev is our name of our Hebrew fathers. Moshe Yassur and our similarities do not end there, as you will hear later on. Moshe Yassur was born in the town of Yassi in Romania in 1934 and survived together with his mother one of the worst pogroms in Europe during the Second World War, where 12,000 Jews or more were essentially killed in the streets of Yassi by the Germans and the help of the local people. After the war, while going to high school in Romania, he established himself as a child actor in the original Goldfarb Yiddish language theater, as well as the National Romanian Theater. In the 1950s, he immigrated with his mother to Israel, where he served as a soldier and an officer in the Sinai Campaign in 1956 and the Six-Day War in 1957. I came to Israel in 1949 and served in the Israeli army in 1958. While building a career in Israel, Moshe Yassur received a special scholarship to study in Paris, and he was able to work and assist Jean-Marie Serrault, a noted collaborator of Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco, and he came known to know Ionesco rather personally, and he's one of his essential disciples. In New York, he worked as a director of the new Federal Theater, the Soho Rep, and taught theater, and most recently has gone back to Romania to direct several plays in Yiddish for the Jewish State Theater in Bucharest, as well as directing premiere production in Romania. His recent production in New York is an adaptation of Bashevis Singer, the story Gimpel Tam, or some of you know it as Gimpel the Fool, which was performed in the Jewish National Theater, the Volksbühne. It is a pleasure and an honor to present Moshe Yassur, my colleague in arms and in the Holocaust. Moshe.
Thank you, Moshe, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity to tell you the story of what happened to my little town, Yassi. It is a story that I haven't told yet. I'm 76 old, and this story has never been told by me. Yassi is the second town after Bucharest, Bucharest being the capital of Romania. It is situated in northeast of Romania, close to the Russian border. What was then, before the war, the Russian border. Now it is the Ukrainian border. It is a town